I'm going to try to compress some time, and I'll do just a very brief introduction of our next speaker. Mark Shlanta is the Chief Executive Officer of SDN Communications. He is an amazing community leader with our Forward Sioux Falls program and the Chamber's Community Appeals program. In addition to that, he's worked hard to lead efforts to expand SDN's network access across South Dakota and into neighboring states. He's increased business and institutional access to broadband connectivity, and he's spearheaded the development of the company's data center and co-location facility here in Sioux Falls. Everyone, let's welcome to the stage Mark Shlanta.
And Bryce, I'm a father of four, so you can tell already my risk profile is a little lower than yours. I didn't jump onto the stage. And my hobbies include coin collecting, and just most recently, just past week, I planted a new asparagus bed in my garden. So that's my risk profile when it comes to what I do with my time off. But first thing, I just, again, wanted to say thank you for taking time out of your day to join the Sioux Falls Chamber and this conference, learn more about cybersecurity, whether you're an IT professional or one of the company's business leaders. Cybersecurity and just understanding the risks associated with IT are an important part of our business. So I've got a couple of slides. My first one, actually the first three are going to come from recent Forward Sioux Falls Investors Breakfast, because they talk about the growing economy of the region. And that's really what I'm touching on. It's just some of the cybersecurity risks in the region. This first slide, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. That's off. The first slide is on the population of Sioux Falls. And just show everyone, of course, that as we know, Sioux Falls area has been growing. The MSA, the four-county region, Minnehaha, Lincoln, McCook, Turner counties, starting to push 270,000 people. We're up about 40,000 people in since the beginning of this decade. And if you advance and say, look at what does that mean to workforce in the area, again, of those 40,000 people who have come into Sioux Falls, we've put nearly 60%, over 60% of them have gone into our workforce here in Sioux Falls. We're a growing workforce here in the Sioux Falls area. And it's growing faster than the population did. But the next slide I wanted to talk about is the labor participation rate. So in Sioux Falls, in the MSA, 3/4 of the people between 18 and 65 who are able to work are employed. So we have a huge workforce that is available to us as employers. We take advantage of that workforce. But one of the things we can do with that workforce is train that workforce on cybersecurity. And that trained workforce then not only is in our businesses helping us, but it also extends those cybersecurity practices that you develop at work into home. And I think one of the advantages we have of the Sioux Falls area, with so many people active in our workforce, is that we can reduce some of the cybersecurity risks in the Sioux Falls MSA that maybe other areas of the country cannot address as easily because of that labor participation in the workforce. And so as business leaders, that's really the opportunity I think that we have in terms of training our employees toward better cybersecurity hygiene, as the senator touched on, transferring that back home, reducing the threat risk across the region, and then reducing the threat risk to ourselves in our businesses. So regionally, I just wanted to touch on a few things we see at SDN. Distributed denial of service attacks. This slide just shows a 2-year graph, and it shows an increasing slope. Well, the rate of attack is actually growing faster than the population and growing faster than the workforce. So again, the tools that we've talked about, they're being more disseminated, they happen, they're just more available, and those attacks are happening. But some of the things that we see, and you see on the slides, is a 31 gigabit attack is the largest attack we've seen across our network, focused at businesses who are on our network. Well, generally a 31 gigabit attack is going to exceed the physical limits of most of your networks. Most of us probably have 1 gigabit, 10 gigabit types of interfaces. So we are overwhelmed. So think of, those attackers coming at you, but they're coming at you so great, your defenses, your basic defenses might be your physical port. It interrupts your business. That's how this type of attack damages you, is because it just overwhelms that physical aspect. You can no longer communicate. Customers can no longer communicate with you. One thing I just wanted to make sure we touch on, this April. If you look at the slides, summers, the last 2 years have been our peaks. So what's going on in the summers could be a variety of things. You got high school students who are bored. Put them to work, right? Get them in your workforce. But who knows what's happening? But one of the things I think that happens also in our workforce is people take time off, right? And so these types of things start to come around, and your business becomes just a little more vulnerable when some of your top IT and cybersecurity professionals are out of the office. I'm speculating, but I do see in the data that DDoS attacks happen at businesses more in the summer based on the data we see on our systems. Managed firewall. It's another type of, platform or solution that we offer businesses in the region. And as the Senator touched on and Bryce touched on, the information we have in our systems is what people are after, right? Nearly 50% of the types of attacks that we see through the firewalls, people trying to reach that information that you have. So as the Senator touched on the military information that the Department of the Navy had. We don't necessarily have military information on our systems, but we do have business information about our customers, information about our strategies, information about our directions. And that's a valuable piece of what those folks are after, in addition to those logon credentials, usernames, passwords. Those are the kind of things that, of course, people are taking. We see those kind of things in the news. The other aspects that you see here on the firewall, it's again about 50% of the types of things. The Senator used the term weaponizing. I thought, what an interesting term. But that's what happens if some of our systems are infiltrated. Is they can become a point where other attacks get launched. Can be launched from, or they become a disruption to our business, like that DDoS attack that I was talking about. So the people who are in our systems trying to steal our information, they want to be in and they want to be silent. They just want to be pulling that information out slowly, as Bryce touched on. Hopping the network, scraping the network, and finding a way then to get that information out. So as IT professionals and business leaders, what are the things that we can do to reduce our risks? And you see the 4 items I've got listed: training, passwords, awareness, and being proactive. But I think the most important word to me is being proactive and really being active as business leaders and IT professionals in educating our employees, the workforce. And I understand, just listening to Bryce talk about educating the C-suite. I have my own IT team coming to me with different ideas, different challenges, and I don't always follow with what they're talking about. So I have to make sure I slow down enough to listen to what they're saying and ask the questions to help them put the risks in my language. So for all of you IT professionals, remember, talk at a 3rd grade level. Right, when you're talking with your senior executives when it comes to cybersecurity. It'll just help them understand. It'll help you get your point across. When it comes to training, this is where the cyber hygiene pieces come in. And the Senator touched on just the importance of cyber hygiene. But again, I think as business leaders and IT professionals, the most important things that we have to do is protect our assets. And by doing that, in order to protect our assets, we have to train our teams. And certainly, Bryce touched on phishing as one of the easiest ways, I think and probably the easiest ways for the bad guys to enter our networks is through phishing. And it's such an easy training aspect. If you aren't training your teams on phishing, figure out a way to start that. There's so many services out there. There's so many people who can help you right here in this community, help you build an education platform, and a phishing campaign so you can train your staff. I serve on one of the local boards, and recently their IT professional came in and said, 5 years ago, I did a summer phishing exercise, and 70% of the people took the bait. So 5 years ago, 70% of their employees took the bait. And luckily, it was a benign incident. You know, he was trying to figure out how many people would click for that free pizza, click for that free car wash, whatever that bait is that he threw out in front of them. He said this past year, when he ran his phishing exercise, he had 5. He says, it's always the same 5, but now I know where to continue to concentrate my efforts. Right? But it also tells me the rest of the team understands those risks, those threats, and the importance of keeping the network safe. Passwords, pretty simple area for us to keep our network secure. And IT professionals, I know what you're saying. They won't let me implement a policy that says to change the passwords as often as I'd like. Well, find a happy median with your C team, and get that password change policy in place. And I always say there's probably 3 things that go with passwords when it comes to passwords. But treat them like underwear. And you're going to say, Mark, what are you talking about? But if you treat your passwords like underwear, remember you should change them often. All right, make sure they're long enough to do the job. All right, and don't share them with anybody. So if you remember those 3 things about your passwords, pretty simple way to keep your business and keep yourself safe. And awareness. It's events like this. It's training within your organization that'll help keep your business safe. And then last thing, at all of your tables, you should have our wrap-up 2018 cyber threat assessment. It talks about different things happening regionally, gives you a couple of ideas for training within your organizations. Take it with you, and if you have some questions, I know my team can just address some of those things with you and point you in the right direction when it comes to your own business's cybersecurity. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for being here today.